Hi, I'm a little late getting started today. I was just thinking about misogyny because I remember when my daughters were little, they were maybe 9, and I was tucking them into bed, and one of them said, "Mommy, what's a misogynist?" And so I did my best to define it to her in terms that a 9-year-old could understand. And she turned to me and she said, "I think Daddy's a misogynist." And I said, "Why do you think that?" And she went on to proceed to tell me of the ways in which she saw that her dad was treating their brother differently than them. So it's very interesting that what happens is I'm not sure when I was married to the man, I understood what misogyny was. And and it's kind of like this thing that has slowly sort of infiltrated into my thinking to recognize how many ways and how many times that I've gone along with it and not understood it, didn't realize that's what was going on, and was in relationships with people who were actual misogynists because I didn't have an awareness not only that it even existed, but I didn't have enough self esteem for myself to be able to recognize it. I'm Melody Brook. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I'm a marriage and family therapist. I'm an actor. I'm a speaker. I'm an author. And I'm a mom and a grandmom. And I have a lot of granddaughters. And my children, of course, have a whole different way of raising their children than how I raised mine. And I'm really happy to say that they're doing an incredible job and that all of them have come to recognize the need for helping their daughters have their own voice and recognize how it got off. There we go. And recognizing that their daughters need to understand their value and how to protect themselves and how to speak up and how to recognize what consent is and how to be respectful of consent for other people as well as consent for themselves, right? And this is not anything that we ever even talked about, thought about. It was just sort of a given in our background that we just we kept our mouths shut and we tried to please the men in our lives. And that was just how sort of the world was when I was growing up. And it's fascinating to me that now that I have this awareness, I can start to change my voice. I can start to recognize, I don't like this. I do like this. This is good. This is not good. And having the confidence to say what I think when in a man's presence and really speak my truths and not worry about whether or not I'm going to get punished for it, which I may. But I now understand that part of my own complicity with the misogyny was my own inability to actually say what I thought, to actually rank my opinions and my feelings and my creativity as highly as the men in my life. And so I've started to see that, especially in the acting world, where they're just so largely male dominated in terms of acting, in terms of the film production companies. And why is that? Well, it's largely because women have not been respected in that arena to the point that women used to be not a box office draw. That when there was a movie made, it was the guy's name, the man's name that people were going to the theater for. At least that's how Hollywood saw it, which meant men had all the power, and certainly in Hollywood that has always been the case. So it's no surprise that Harvey Weinstein happened because they were basically misogynists who were treating women as though they were their own personal toys. And that's beginning to change, not only in Hollywood, but I see that it's happening in the world. I mean, I'm thrilled to see what's happened with Governor Cuomo. And while I liked him as a person, or not a person, but as a governor, I liked him and thought that he did a decent job in many ways. But when I saw that picture I just saw the photo of his first accuser. And it was a picture of them at a party where she says he was touching her inappropriately. And I saw the look on her face in that picture. And I knew that feeling. I knew that feeling in my gut. And I knew she had been abused. I knew she had that what she said was true because of the look on her face. And how many of us women have had that look on our face? How many of us have had that look of trying to act like everything was fine when nothing was fine? And that is a look that we have learned since we were tiny. And it's so amazing to me to see my children teaching their little kids from the time they're babies. If you don't want that touch, if you don't want that hug, if you don't want that kiss on your cheek, if you don't want that pat on your shoulder, you don't have to have it. That you are allowed to say, no, I don't like that at whatever age. And to bring them up in an atmosphere of respecting their own bodies and their own right to manage their body space, which I was not raised like that, and I think there's an awful lot of us that were not raised like that. So now today, seeing my children's children being brought up in a world where they are respected from the time they're a baby, it gives me hope. It gives me hope for the next generation, beyond my children even, because I see, if we survive it, um, a world in which we have more respect for all of us, male or female, and where misogyny is no longer the predominant factor in corporations, in the entertainment industry, in all of our lives, in the Olympics, for example. Because look at the way the women performed at the Olympics this year. Was that not amazing? Women can do anything they set their minds to do, and they should be allowed to. And who's to say, that men supposedly, should have more right or more privilege than a person who happens to be female? And and I look back at the election, um, 2016 most specifically, and then even in 2020, how the women who were running for office were um, condemned for how they looked, condemned for being too strong, for being too outspoken, and being too what were some of the words they used about Hillary, that were just really demeaning about the way she presented herself, because she was a strong, outspoken woman who was not easily backed down. And in our culture, that means that women are treated as though that's somehow a terrible thing, that we're not really supposed to do that. We're not really supposed to speak up. We're not really supposed to be strong. We're not really supposed to have a voice and be that confident and be that assertive, because if we are, then that makes us ugly and unattractive. And that's across the board in so many different areas. And women ourselves, we do that to ourselves, because that misogyny is so ingrained in us that we will say back those very same things about a woman, that they are aggressive or angry, or that something's wrong with them because they have a voice, because they speak up, they speak their truth, and they do it intelligently and assertively, that somehow that makes them worse than a man who does the very same thing. I mean, it's like, in growing up, a woman who spoke up and who said no to things was considered a bitch, cold, frigid, right? All those things. And this is the world that we are starting to break free from. And I'm excited to see that it's happening. So I'm Melody Brooke. I'm a licensed professional counselor, marriage and family therapist. You can find out more about me at melodybrook.com. You can also find my books and workbooks on Amazon. And I'm going to see who's with us today. I see a couple of people joining. Um, uh, Summer, hi, Summer. She says, yes, like the breast brushers, men that somehow managed to brush my breast accidentally. Right, right. Trump had a specific word for strong women, nasty. Yeah. And you know what? What's up with that? What's up with a culture that says that's okay to speak to women that way, to treat us as if, having a voice and being strong means that we're somehow nasty? Oh my God. You know, uh. And so I'm just really um, amazed at how much more women today are being aware of the need for moving out of that old paradigm, and men starting to embrace it as well. And that will begin to push us into an era of being more respectful of women and treating us with the honor and respect that we earn. Like each of us, we each have to earn that, right? That's not a given. Male or female, it should not be a given privilege to be respected and to be allowed to have our own voice and our own body space. So somebody else is here. Ashley, yeah, I wear my shirt like that always. Not since the assault. She's very careful. Yeah, right. This kind of a shirt could be seen as somehow being provocative, right? In a culture where men view women as sex objects. Yeah, absolutely. And that, how sad is that you can't feel free to be yourself? And I'm sorry, Ashley. And I know that's because of a misogynist perpetrator who hurt you. And I hate that happens to us. It happens to so many of us. And when we can start fighting back and when we can start speaking with our own voice, that can start to change. Yeah, it is so ridiculous. And I understand it because you've been hurt. And it makes sense that you have that reaction because you got to figure out a way to not be hurt again, right? Ugh. Ashley says she's working through it. Great. I'm so happy to hear. It's a hard thing to work through because we have to be around men all the time, and we have to recognize and remember that a large portion of them are still living in that misogynistic paradigm, and we have to be careful not to fall into it ourselves. And that is where we really get to feel empowered. Okay, I gotta go. I got stuff to do today with my children who are visiting from Berlin. You saw that picture I posted the other day. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you next time.